Welcome everybody to the Defiant Summer Jam. We have an amazing selection of people here. We have Trevor Jones, we have Parker Brooks, we have Seth Gable, we have Simon Wong, we have Gabby Dizon, we have Abby and Paul from the
Top
Dog Beach Club. I know, there's so many of them in my head right now. The point of this entire session is to answer a single question, which is, what does the long tail of creators and NFTs look like? And how do we, as human beings who have had careers and have had a long time in creative industries, inform how this space moves forward from here? So the selection of people I put together today are, we're not the youngest bunch, put it that way. We're people who've got some gray hairs in our beard. We've done
Jeez, thank you.
And that was very deliberate. That was very deliberate because as creators and as creative people, we suffer these ups and downs. We go through boom and bust cycles, and life can be incredibly cruel, but it can also be incredibly fruitful as well. And the point is, you can get so caught up in the utopian view of what creators can do with blockchain, with NFTs and all this stuff, that you can forget that we can have these crushing cycles of negativity as well. So the point of this session was to try and understand what a sustainable long-term vision of NFTs, creators, and everything looks like. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump in and just introduce all of our panel guests, because they will do a much worse job than I possibly could, because I wrote this in advance. So we're going to start with the man himself, Trevor Jones, who has now gotten rid of his beard. I had a whole thing planned about the beards on display, because Seth has a beard, Paul has a beard, Gabby has a beard, Parker has, I don't know what you call that. I have a beard. But anyway, Trevor Jones is a Canadian, but we won't hold that against him because he's become an honorary Scotsman graduating from the Edinburgh College of Art. But here's the thing about Trevor, he did it late. When most of us are thinking about buying Porsches and hand-blown Japanese toe clippers, TJ decided he'd plant his flag at the intersection of art and technology because, as he tells it, he needed something radical to separate himself from the horde of other artists out there. And this is the wonderful thing about Trevor. He is resolutely an analog craftsman operating in a digital world and enjoying an almost unique position as someone who's old enough to know better, but still young enough to kick it with the kids. And we love him for it. Thank you for joining us, Trevor. It's always a pleasure to have you in any kind of conversation. Simon Wong, who is like, he's got a man bun, he's got a mullet. Like, what is going on there? Simon, in Zoolander, Fabio is described as the ultimate slashy, the actor slash model, and I have no idea what the writer would have made us call him. And it seems wrong to call him that, because to me he will always be Swanee Swan Dog. And Mr. Wong is just the most insanely gifted human you could ever meet. He was a musician. He taught himself how to rap. He decided to write a book and immediately got it published. He decided to become an actor, made it to Hollywood, and he's also an artist creating stuff like this. Amazing stuff. And with Swanee, it's kind of rare to find a soulmate, and it's even rarer to find someone whose creative talents so beautifully dovetail with your own. But Swanee and I, we are SuperMassive, and it's a crying shame that you and I do not work together more. Look at that. Moving on to Gabby. Gabby is an absolute hero. He's a startup entrepreneur and a 15-year veteran of the game industry in Southeast Asia. He founded Altitude Games back in 2014, but was producing games for the mobile market as far back as 2004, when he must have been about 12 years old. Now, he hails from the Philippines, and while most of our eyes have been distracted by China and the US, a quiet revolution has been brewing in the play-to-earn space with Axie Infinity, which is a blockchain game that has allowed COVID-affected Filipinos to earn a meaningful, genuine living playing a game with colorful digital creatures. Players earn the smooth love potion. We'll come back to that, because I think Swanee could use some of that in his life. And that can be converted into crypto and then into real money. Yield Guild Games, which Gabby founded, is a decentralized player guild co-founded by Gabby to share proceeds and allow members to earn more money. And I'm really excited to have Abby and Paul here. Put your hands up. They are the artist and developer behind the Top Dog Beach Club, which is a brand new avatar collectible project. And they claim that they're aiming to push the boundaries of what a collectible project can be. The collection just went live. It's starting to find its feet in a space which has become increasingly saturated as more and more projects attempt to ride on the coattails of the Bored Ape Yacht Club. And the team is unusual because, as you can see, they're not anonymous. We can see their faces. They are quite happy to present themselves, be out there, and talk about what they're doing. And we have a female face in this group. And that is something that I feel bad about because we should have tried harder to get more. And I'm sorry, Abby, about that. Parker, who is the man with the incredible beard, he is in fact now the vice president of NFT products at Ledger. But if you look at Parker on LinkedIn, you will see something incredible because this guy has some serious chops in the music space. Beats Music, Apple Music. Parker was an essential member of the team at a company whose lead visionary, Steve Jobs, openly spoke about his deep connection to music and how important that was to him. Apple and music went hand in hand. And this man with his incredible facial hair was a huge part of that. So it's amazing that Parker has then found his journey taking him into NFTs. That someone who had all of that history behind him thinks this space is where it's at. And in our first conversation, Parker told me that he's generally considered unemployable. Where would you get that opinion from? I couldn't think of a greater reason for us to stay in touch. And then Seth, I have no idea how we ended up connecting, but I'm so glad.
Parker in a movie.
Yeah, there you go. So Seth is, if you don't know who Seth is, he's an actor. And he's been in TV shows that I'm sure you would have seen. He comes from Hollywood, but I think you now call New York your home. And Seth has been directed by some of the greatest talents of our time. Ron Howard, Cindy Lumet. He's been in Nip Tuck, Fringe, Salem, Sex and the City, Dirty Sexy Money, Billions, and many more. And I think there's been an enormous amount of suspicion about mainstream talents and people coming into crypto thinking that they're going to take it over and pervert it back to the old models of doing things. But the conversations I've had with Seth, 100%, that's not the case. I've been so impressed with you in terms of the respect you have for this space, the interest you have in this space, and the light touch way in which you've tried to get into it. But you've also been, you were kind of voted People Magazine's sexiest human on the planet. And I want to know how and why.
I wasn't.
I
was in that magazine. But I think Matt Damon was the sexiest, and I was just one of the afterthoughts that they had.
Matt Damon, like who cares?
And now no one's ever heard of him, so.
No, exactly. But Seth represents Hollywood, and so the whole point of this panel was to take people from all walks of life, but genuine creators, people who have chops in this space. We have Parker, who comes from a music background, who cares about artists. We have Seth, who comes from a Hollywood background, who's trying to bring the best of Hollywood and the best of Hollywood talent. And let's not forget, like the best writers on the planet, they work in Hollywood right now. And the best actors, there's a huge amount of creative energy there, but do it in a respectful way. And then we have Gabby, who is creating a platform and a medium for just ordinary people to subsist, just to get by, but through blockchain, through gaming, through fun. And then we have Paul and Abby, who are creating an IP platform, a creative idea, a community around something. And then we have Swanee, who just hates blockchain. And then we have Trevor, who sits above it all and seems to present as if he would rather it all went away and he could just go and do pottery. And so it feels like an incredible opportunity.
Do you think you can remove your PC or something?
Yeah, I can remove my PC. So let's just get rid of that. And then we should be good. Bring Cooper. So we have Cooper Turley, who's about to join. And Cooper is, well, I'll give you his intro. Cooper he's been a long-standing contributor to the Defiant, but if you know him and his gravity-defying hair already, you might struggle to find anything that he's not contributing to, because Cooper is a participation maximalist. If variety is the spice of life, then Cooper's life on social media is a chicken vindaloo because he is everywhere. Governance, check. Tokenomics, check. Thought leadership, check. Surprising hip-hop cameos, check. He's one of the few people who's engaged to walk this earth. Sorry?
Lead from the desktop. Yeah, there we go.
Whatever it is, it's debating the linguistic merits of a Yeezy verse or ape into DeFi, NFTs, and wherever the alpha is. If crypto has an Ubermensch, it would probably look like Cooper. Is Cooper there? Can we get him in the stream? There he is. There we go. We have Cooper Turley. Wow, look at your hair, Cooper. Amazing. So this is an incredible group of people. And I want to start with the person who probably is... I want to start with the person who's staying up latest, which is Gabby, because Axie Infinity has been this incredible success story over the last year. But it came out of nowhere. We've all been fixated on high level kind of NFTs selling for millions of dollars, and yet somewhere in your corner of the world, ordinary people have been grinding out a living and actually having fun, earning a living and subsisting. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what's been happening with Axie and how you got into that space and what lessons we can learn from what's been happening with Yield Guild and Axie Infinity.
So Axie has been around since 2018. I actually started playing the game as a community member late 2018, became friends with the founders who were there, just really fell in love with the community. I was probably as a part of the community at under 1,000 players, and just started breeding, playing the game, accumulating land, and it was a fun way to basically play games and earn some ETH. And then something happened last year during the lockdown, in that a lot of people from my home country in the Philippines were basically laid off from their job. They were at home, they had no money, getting really desperate and looking for ways to earn money online. And some people in the rural areas of the Philippines found this game, and they realized that they could actually make 2 to 3 times more money from playing Axie Infinity, earning SLP and turning that into Ether and ultimately fiat than the games that they were laid off from. So that's led to the explosive growth in Axie. And yeah, and what we do at Yield Guild is that we invest in NFTs and we breed basically thousands and thousands of Axies. I think we have 12,000 of them now. And we lend them out to players from all over the world, many in developing countries such as Philippines, Indonesia, Venezuela, Brazil, India, so that they can earn a pretty good living playing these games. So in Axie, so now things have really exploded. The daily marketplace volume is over $20 million. And most of these players are what we call scholars, or people who are playing this game with assets lent out from guilds such as Yield Guild. And I think that if you look at Axie Infinity as an economy, I think it's the top 10 remittance economy that's sending money to the Philippines now, probably on par with like many of the different countries like US that are sending money back to the Philippines. And that's the kind of impact that it's having right now.
Seth, going to put this to you. Are you aware of Axie Infinity at all?
I am, yeah. It's like, I think it's, as of yesterday, the most used DApp out there, earning the most money out of like everything, which is incredible. I looked into getting some land, but it definitely feels like it's like I'm way too late, a few years too late.
But you say you're way too late, but Gabby, from what it sounds like, this is for ordinary people who really just have a phone and not much else, are able to play and participate. So if Seth's saying it's too late, is he right?
Well, I sold a piece of land for $600,000 yesterday. So,
sorry, I'm sorry. What? I'm sorry. Like,
so there are levels to the game.
Jesus.
Yeah. So yeah, there's land. I mean, at the entry level, you can go with a guild such as Yield Guild and basically borrow Axies that you can play for no upfront cost, and then you can invest in Mystic Axies, which are collectibles, kind of more similar to CryptoPunks in the sense that they're very kind of rare and collectible. And land is also very rare and scarce, and you can earn the governance token access from it later on when land gameplay opens, which is why it's so valuable.
That's interesting. Well, I want to open up to Abby and Paul now, because they've just launched a collectibles project, and it sounds like they've got a pretty decent vision of where they want it to go. Were you aware of Axie? Have you got a plan to enable people to kind of earn something or subsist or be entrepreneurial on top of the platform that you're building with Top Dogs?
I've definitely heard of Axie, but I don't know much about the projects because it's so hard to keep up to date on everything. There's so much stuff coming out there. But yeah, we want to build upon this. You know, it is another collectibles project, but as you touched upon at the start, Robin, we're trying to do things a bit differently. I think we are. We have a utility token called Bones, so that people can freely trade that and do things with their dogs. So we're having renaming of the dogs, giving them a backstory. So there's definitely some utility built into there. But I don't know if many people here have been in sort of different communities of different collectible projects, but I'm biased, but the communities that we're building here just seem it seems special. It seems a little bit different. People generally are in love with the art and they want to hold on to the collectible, which I think is quite a hard thing to build. But yeah, we've got some good success going on.
Well, it's interesting because I listen to Cooper and what he says a lot, and he talks about communities and about rendering value back into the hands of the people who are the fans. And I want to put this question to Parker because you've come from Beats Music. You worked with artists a lot. What were the kinds of questions, what were the kinds of things that artists were asking you for? And how were you not able to meet that in Apple Beats? Or what was the opportunity in NFTs that you see to do things differently or to be a better advocate for artists in the space that we now find ourselves in?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, me and Cooper work on a project with FWB, which I think is a huge piece of what this could be and where NFTs goes, which is how do we have NFTs that we help artists create that then provide access for their fans. I think that this, like the notion of moving this into real life and actually having your phone plus your private keys provide seamless access to experience is where this goes. And I think that that's how we get to the next 100 million people on crypto. And I think it's those 100 million people that we get using in real life experiences with NFTs is how we get the next 7 billion people super interested. And I think that the in real life experiences that we create that are powered by access through having these collectibles and NFTs and if we do it in a way that whereby like folks can't live without it, and they don't want to live without it. They don't want to live with the access that we provide through these experiences.
It's Richard.
Provide that I think that's how we're going to get the next 7 billion people on the platform with us.
Well, that's a big claim, and it's a big statement.
It is.
For Trevor, for instance, he does one of ones, so he doesn't need 7 billion people. He needs one person to buy a painting.
No, I don't need that. Like for one artist, right? I think that like the massive adoption for blockchain technology is going to take us collectively working together to make experiences that people can't live without, right? That like day to day in my life, I can't live without actually having these assets in my life. They either provide access to things that otherwise I couldn't have access to, or they provide a means for me to transact in a way that I could never transact with fiat. And if we do that and we provide and we do that in a culturally really relevant way for the next, let's just say 100 million people, that's how we're going to get the next 7 billion people to adopt blockchain technology. And I think that's our goal at Ledger, and that's quite frankly part of my personal goal, is that for this stuff to flourish, we've got to move it out of it being niche technology, right? And it's got to be moved into where it's transparent in our daily lives.
But pardon me for being the contrarian here, but it sounds like such big picture stuff. It's like we're going to change the lives of a billion people. It seems completely out of reach and nonsensical. But I guess you worked for a company where they actually did exactly that, and you're laughing about it. But like,
well, I mean, I think that's where we have to like. I think like this. I'm thinking in a way that like, how do we take? Because we have businesses, right? We all have like really nascent businesses. While some of us are more successful than others, it's like we're nowhere close to the size and scale of Apple or Amazon. And so for us to get to that, I really firmly believe we've got to start to create like these incredible experiences around access and around like making life like better with NFTs in it than without. And once we do that, and then we do that with culture first, that's how we're going to get the rest of the people to recognize that like, oh, there's something more to it than just, trading currencies.
Well, Trevor, you have a binary view of this, because I know that for you, painting, creating is the most important thing. But at the same time, you've enjoyed this incredible success, and it must in some way boost you, flatter you, cause you to think in ways that you would never have thought before. But you only need one person to buy a painting for it to be a success. So this is a very different mindset, a very different methodology. You don't need to reach a big audience. You need to reach one person. So I'm curious how you think about what Parker's just said in terms of just sustainability of your own career.
I agree. I mean, I don't need that level. You know, and obviously, I think Parker has a very different experience in general with regards, you know, in relation to me. So, you know, for me, like a lot of creatives, artists, it was, you know, it started out as, you know, almost a way of kind of, you know, self-help of finding some sense of stability and meaning in my life, which is why I got into becoming an artist so late. I was 38 when I graduated. You know, so, but I agree also, you know, what's happened to me over the last year, 2 years, you know, really has completely changed my life and the way I think about things. With my February drop with the Bitcoin Angel, you know, I accidentally made a collectible, you know, with 4,158 people buying it, or buying one. I think it was about 2,500 owners, you know, and that time it was really, I mean, it was completely surreal. It blew me away. It changed my life, you know, financially, but at the same time, I was almost devastated that I thought I'd ruined my career, because now I've got 2,500 people who want something from me. But at the same time, then I've built a community around that. And I think this is the first time I've really understood that sense of community. You know, I think, you know, I get most of my information on Twitter, and it's that's probably why I'm so angry and confused all the time. But you know, it's this now with this whole kind of Bitcoin Angel and my artwork in general community with Discord, it's super exciting. It's crazy. You know, I never expected that to happen. But at the same time, there's huge responsibilities, and I'm painting less now than ever before. And so I have this emotional, you know, turmoil inside me that I struggle with that. So I will probably be moving to see Gabby in the near future to paint ceramics on his on a beach somewhere, and he's got money, so it's all good. So
you're very welcome.
Well, it seems to me that there's this huge spectrum. There's kind of an economic wasteland out there, and we can plant a flag wherever we choose to. I'm curious, Cooper, how you respond to all of this, because I know you have a foot in so many different parts of this. Do you have a kind of a hot spot that you think is ripe for someone like Trevor to kind of go and explore and do more with? Because I'm sure you're aware of what he's accomplished, and maybe he could do more, or maybe he should do less. But you know, what's your take on particularly what Parker said? I think.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of it. I think that community ownership is the name of the game. You know, it's not a question of doing more with it. I think every artist has the ability to lean into it to the degree that they want. And what we see now in the market is those that build strong community are having the most, you know, high value network effects. I think Axie Infinity is a great example of this. You know, anyone who's been around for the past 2 or 3 years has seen this in the Discord server from day one. And it's no surprise to me that now it's being recognized as one of the most valuable projects in crypto solely because they built that from the ground up. So there's no right answer for how to build community, but I think anyone that tries to give it the time of day is going to see really strong benefits from doing so.
Well, it's perfect timing because we now have Richard Welsh. Richard is someone that I should have known 10, 15 years ago. Somehow our paths didn't cross, but they've crossed in crypto, because Richard ended up working for the people that I used to employ in a company called Big Bulls. Yeah, it was a company called Big Bulls. And they called themselves Big Bulls because they had big balls. They were incredibly courageous young men. They founded probably what was one of the first big brand-funded YouTube channels, and took on a bunch of different kind of weird and wonderful experiments through YouTube. The Copa 90 was a big football channel they created. Richard was a big part of that. Richard has now found himself in Edgeware, and a big part of the community and the DAO and the expansion of Edgeware. If you don't know the Polkadot ecosystem, don't worry, it's wild and weird. But Richard is specifically interested in building sustainable models for funding for long-term creative projects through, can I talk about Kabocha? I just outed you, I'm sorry. Richard, welcome to the chat. Yeah. Richard is building an arts and culture parachain that's designed to specifically do this long tail sustainable funding of creative projects to support creators over not just a boom and bust cycle like we have in crypto, but like a really genuine kind of healthy, sustainable model. Firstly, Richard, is this even possible? And why are you taking this on? Because, hey, this is crypto, money go up, everything up. Why would you be interested in, slow drip?
Well, first off, I want to check that my internet isn't going to freeze. Like, can everyone actually hear me? Because we might be doing really exciting things, but can you actually hear me? Okay. Yeah, like Robin said, my internet was breaking up a little bit. That's why I was a bit worried. But I've done all sorts of different things. But a lot of my background has been working for public service broadcasters like the BBC and Channel 4 in the UK. And the thing that I've always kind of been interested in is what would public service broadcasting look like in a network world, where you could effectively separate like a subscription model that Netflix have and Amazon have, and an advertising model that everyone sort of talks about. And could you do that with crypto? Could you do that with a network? And how might that work? And so, yeah, I've been down the sort of rabbit hole like everyone else has for sort of like quite a long time. And for me, the most interesting question out there is like, how do you sustainably fund arts and culture, or to be honest, anything, without having to resort to immediately selling a token or selling something? And for me, I did the whole sort of like, I did Bitcoin for a long time. I did Ethereum on the run up in 2017, was talking to Joe Lubin and Consensus about kind of this same idea. And I then discovered a project called Decred, which people might know about, but they invented this this model, kind of evolved Bitcoin, but a proportion of the block rewards that would ordinarily just go to miners get pooled into a treasury. And then they have a governance platform that anyone can put forward proposals, and you can basically ask for money for pretty much anything. I mean, obviously the limits are the kind of imagination or the kind of like the interests of the existing community. And that sort of was the first point I saw a kind of stack that was very similar to a public service broadcaster, which is effectively sustainable funding, governance, values, and then a proposal system. Now, Ethereum kind of has DAOs and Sushi Swap and all these sort of like Uniswap, sorry. But for me, there needs to be a sort of an actual blockchain. There needs to be a way that you can build a community from the ground up. And with something called Substrate, the team who launched Polkadot also created something called Substrate. And Substrate effectively allows you to effectively create a blockchain, deploy a blockchain in like a few hours, really. And then the whole idea of Polkadot is that you have a chain that effectively sits in the middle and relays messages from all these kind of individual application chains, which could be for literally anything. And so you don't need to have the same kind of security that you try and get for if you were launching a network like Ethereum. And yeah, and so that's how I discovered a project called Edgeware. Edgeware is this weird sort of like odd project that launched with something called the Lock Drop in 2018, sorry, where you could, it was kind of one of the first versions of yield farming, where you could, if you had Ethereum, you'd lock it in a contract for 3, 6, 9, 12 months. And then in return, you'd get edge tokens. And so what it ended up with, I think 4.5 million ETH was locked, which is like the biggest, well, it gives it one of the top 5 distributions in all of crypto. But the team who launched it gave away 90% of the tokens. And whether they saw it as a sort of feature or a bug, they didn't quite realize that if you give away 90% of the tokens, you will have a community who will actually have a voice, and you don't get to do everything your own way. And so it's kind of fascinating, because what happened is they had their own way initially, and they put forward a bunch of proposals, but they kind of put them forward and were able to vote them through. And it kind of annoyed quite a few people. And so they've ended up now with this community, which has kind of emerged. And yeah, we've got a treasury of, well, it was about $30 million about 6 months ago. It's now about $4 million. But the crazy thing is, you can see a path to these application chains basically sustaining really small collectives, building treasuries from the ground up, and like doing it on a blockchain that they actually run themselves. But really, all the technical stuff is handed off to a third party, really. Anyway, that's the sort of idea. And Kabocha is something that, again, we kind of, the community sort of created or had the idea to launch. And for those who know the artist Kusama, like that's the That's the reason Kusama is called Kusama, and kabocha is Japanese for pumpkin, and Kusama loves kabocha. So anyway, so we called it kabocha. It's going to be yellow and black, and the idea is we basically want to use it to, like, we've got a tagline of no promises, and the whole point is to basically fund in the most anti-hype way possible people who are doing things that they don't really know how they're going to work. They've got an idea, but they don't have deliverables. They don't have like a timeline. They just go, I think this is interesting. I'm going to go in this direction, and it might work, but it probably won't. And then we're going to tell the story, and basically that's going to be the way we build the narrative around it. So it's kind of like opposite to everyone going, we've got a roadmap, and we're going to hit our roadmap, and we're going to announce this, this, and this. We're saying, basically, there's the quote from Back to the Future, where we're going, there ain't no roads. So that's the kind of like idea that basically there is no roadmap, and we just want to find interesting people with projects and say, look, we'll back you, we'll fund you, and like we'll tell the story of that journey. So we're funding a process, not a product. That's kind of a big thing. Anyway, that's it.
One of the ideas that you and I have spitballed a lot is that these projects are like a long-running TV show. Seth, you have been on long-running TV shows. You've worked with legendary TV, showrunners like Ryan Murphy, for instance. Do you see some parallels between that kind of ongoing, long-running engagement with communities in terms of how you experienced fans, engagement, everything else in terms of blockchain? I'm just curious how you've ended up being so fascinated in this space, because I know you really are.
Yeah, I'm naturally obsessed with blockchain and just anything that's cutting edge in technology. I'm obsessed with the intersection of art, commerce, and gamification that we're finding now with the Ethereum layer and all these other projects. My dream, and the reason I reached out to you, is because I can see a future where this technology of having DAOs and everything that goes along with it is enabling a version where Star Wars is not owned by Disney, but is owned by the public. And whoever has tokens representing the IP of Star Wars and the IP of those characters, I'm just using Star Wars as an example, it's up to the community to decide what happens to those characters. It's up to the community to decide what projects get made. The community gets to share in the success of, the Star Wars project that's on some kind of a DAO and owned by the public. I can just see, ever since the ICO craze, I started working with some people, and we're still under the radar. But we wanted to create a DAO where basically it was a studio that is owned by the people and for the people, and using the theory that crowdfunding projects would be any project, film, TV, or otherwise that was funded by the DAO. Theoretically, that is a test. If it's worth getting funded by the DAO, then it's very likely to be successful in terms of drawing a crowd to come see it. So I don't have all the answers. My presence in this space right now is mostly listening and not talking. Every single day there's new developments, and you can begin to see how all of these things are going to come together. It's not quite there yet, but it is a ready, fire, aim situation where projects are kind of, we're all throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. But I think we can all see that there is a meal there somewhere. It might be a little messy. It might be picking stuff up off the floor, but eventually we're going to get there and have something special.
Abby wants to speak. I'm going to let Simon speak first, because he and I have had many meals together. We've eaten spaghetti together. And Swanee, you have been very skeptical about this space, and you think it's full of shit. And I'd like to hear from you why you've come.
Sorry, Abby, I was missing, and I've only just come back on. So.
Yeah, we'll come back to you, but I'm curious.
It's fine.
Because I think it's important to have the contrarian view, because it's very easy to get caught up in these sort of utopian, everything's going to be amazing and we're going to make a ton of money. But there is a bear market coming, inevitably, and things will get tougher. And so all that enthusiasm will go away. We need contrarian voices. We need people who are skeptical. And Swanee, you have done NFT sales with me. You've done an NFT sale recently. You should have been the beneficiary of all of the things that are good about this, and yet you are still skeptical. What is it about this space that you find so difficult to embed into your matrix as an artist?
Well, I'm in the corner, so before I feel like squashed now by these crypto luminaries. What's up, Trev? How you doing? No, it's not that I'm shrinking away. I'm not skeptical. It's just it just gets on my tits because it's like it does. It annoys me. Everything. And I've been trying to work it out since you and I have been talking for years now about this, because you are now fully in the matrix, and I have reaped the benefits of it. I've seen people that I know reap the benefits. Like personally, I've seen my bank balance to the point where I'm comfortable now, so I can't shit on it for that reason. But I think trying to nail what annoys me about it is the iterative nature of it and the difference, the separation between what is art or creativity and what is just good because something is new. And that's what really gets on my tits. Without iteration and fragmentation of anything, nothing has time to sit. I see so many avatar things and projects come, and within an hour they're old and no one gives a shit. Like with traditional art and creativity, you've had at least time to absorb it. Like with Renaissance art, with Dada, with surrealism, pop cut, you've at least, even with a year or two before that art has become obsolete, those people that want to absorb it and create it kind of had time to do it because it's something that's burning within them that they want to do, and it's the only thing they can do. And B, because it's not something that's kind of, they're doing it because it's good. Like, and that's what annoys me about some of it. And I know we've had a chat behind the scenes, and I don't want to come across as a Luddite about it. I do think it's cool. I'm a massive gamer. I'm a fucking full nerd. I'm into it. But when it comes to art and NFTs and art and blockchain, the thing that does irk me is that unless it's new, unless it's slightly different, unless it's an iteration of something that's come before in an environment which I think is limited, because what we're dealing with is essentially it's a spreadsheet. That's all it is. It's a spreadsheet of numbers and things that can happen. So you're literally giving yourselves walls of creativity, and it's great. The great things have come out. Great things have come out. Augmented reality stuff, animations, all that have come out. But you'll have this environment, and everything has to come in this. It's same with the coin. The Bitcoin is there's that many, and everything now is a tiny little bit smaller, and you have to try and find your niche, your difference in that tiny slice, and it gets infinitely smaller. Whereas there's these things on this side and that side, which, like, what's happening to those? And another thing that irks me about it is, like, yeah, everyone's buying fucking art. Where's everyone doing that then before? Like, I had loads of pictures. Every artist that's making art had that art, but it's only because of the ease and the mechanics of being able to buy it quickly, and buying that means you get something else, and if you get something else, you can swap it for this. It for me, it's moved away from anyone appreciating art for art's sake to it just being a thing of, like, I saw something that said that NFTs are like walking into a bar and buying the most expensive bottle of champagne. It's not very necessary. It's kind of a waste of fucking money. But in that instant, yeah, you're cool as fuck. You walk into a club and you drop 40 grand on a bottle of Cristal and be like, yo, motherfuckers, look at my shampoo. Yay! What you're saying to everyone is, I'm a bad motherfucker with loads of money. What it's doing to the champagne and to the wineries and the sommeliers and the grapes in France and Provence and that, I don't know. But so that's what's only annoying about it. It's like, I think there's a rift between art and its creation, the relationship between the audience and the artist, and just the fact that if you buy this, you can get that, and that will do something else. And I think there's what I don't understand, and I straddle in between is blockchain and crypto and NFT, is it a big video game, and is art just a level in that game? Do you know what I mean?
Well, okay, so I'm gonna jump in because you love to talk, and we've heard you. Can I
just very quickly say, they say you'll never meet your heroes, but Simon, you didn't let me down. I love it.
I'm no one's hero. You're the fucking hero, Trevor. I thought you'd be Scottish.
He is Scottish by way of Canada. No, this is a perfect moment to hand it over to Abby and Paul, who have just launched an NFT project. It's a collectible. My question to you guys is, it's December 2023. what does your project look like? What does your community look like? Because we are in a bull run. Make no mistake about it. Everything is like, ooh, but shit gets real at the depths of the bear market. What does your project look like? What does the Top Dog Beach Club look like when it's not Miami, it's Skegness? Tell me what that looks like.
Don't shit on Skegness.
I'm not shitting on Skegness.
I'll let you answer that one.
Oh, thanks, Paul.
It's bleak.
Weren't you there recently, Paul?
I was there 2 weeks ago. Yeah. That's why.
Then you know the truth. But anyway, but tell me, like your vision for the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst, because crypto is merciless. So what does it look like?
So I'm quite new to this whole world, and I just find the whole thing really exciting. I think anything's possible, and I think the beauty of it is we don't know where we're going to be in 2023. We hope we're going to take this to great places. We've got so many cool ideas coming from us, coming from the community, and it's going to look different to what it is now, because this has taken us a couple of months to put together. It's 2 months of really hard work with other commitments as well. But in that time, we managed to pull this together with a lot of great features coming through. And by 2023, it could look like anything. And I think that's what's exciting about this space. It's amazing. And just what you were saying before, I had my hand up about community. I really like what you guys are saying about getting the community in and letting them have control over a project. We're all about community. We've already made changes based on what the community have said. We started with 10,000, for example. 10,000 mints in mind. They wanted to go down to 8,000, and the community said they were prepared to pay more. We decided to keep the price the same. So we're all about listening. However, I do have a bit of a counter argument as well. If you're going to run a project solely based on a community vote, then that's, in my opinion, not the most innovative way to. Or the way to find innovative ideas, sorry. You don't end up with pure innovation and mad ideas. You end up with the sort of most vanilla outcome. Isn't it sort of called making decisions by vote, making decisions by community? It's not very innovative, I think, because you just end up with this sort of average, won't you? So just wanted to put that out there.
Well, that is a very good point.
Yeah.
Because I can see Trevor nodding his head. I can see Parker nodding his head. I'm gonna put it over to Parker. Respond. What is your take on this?
I mean, I think running DAOs are really hard. I think that, it's a really challenging. I know a few folks that run them, and it's an incredible. It takes a level of management and a level of like just pure focus to keep communities together. I do believe in that as a separate topic on product development and product design. I actually believe that, I'm with this, that like the vision usually and innovation comes from small groups of people that are trying to have identified problems in the world and are trying to solve them for people. And a lot of times, from my experience, it's like the true innovation comes from people that are out in the world that go, wow, this is a problem that needs to be solved, and then really help inside of corporations, and especially at Apple. Here's how we can solve this for people, and they drive it. And there's like the core. There's usually 1, 2, 3, or 4 people that are out in the world that identify those problems that need to be solved, and then come back into the mothership, if you will, and drive that home. I've had a lot of experience where that works, and I've had a lot of experience where the watered down approach of product by vote by consensus ruins things. So,
Seth, you've been. It's fair to say that film productions are like DAOs in many ways, and TV productions operate in this very kind of strange universe where you get this group of people who don't really know each other. They come together for a brief period of time. It's incredibly intense, incredibly productive, and then they separate. Is that why perhaps you've been drawn to this idea of DAOs, because it's that, except just in a slightly more wholesome way? There is this kind of reputation that. Yeah, there's this reputation that Hollywood has, that it kind of chews and spits out the best creative talent, and then it takes what it needs and disposes of it, and then moves on to the next shiny thing. I'm just curious.
There's many layers to it. Like the actual set is very hierarchical and very much driven like a military, where there's the director and producers in charge, and then everyone else is kind of enabling it. So it's an interesting dilemma with the DAOs, and by having a community make a decision, it's a great point that you're going to end up with the lowest common denominator or choice that's vanilla. And when you do get into the realms of creativity, you do kind of need to replicate a hierarchy where there are people in charge making decisions, but at the same time, you are taking feedback from the community. And so it's tricky. There's something I've been keeping an eye out for, and I'm sure, Robin, you know some people, but I'm really curious who the philosophers are out there that are really studying DAOs and theoretically coming up with different versions of them, because I think we are desperately needing to see the many forms of online governance that can take place. And there's going to be some that are good for commerce and some that are good for creativity. But then when you have something that's good for creativity, if you're going to actually get it made, then you need another form of governance for actually producing that thing and having the digital version, but also in real life, having people oversee that process. So there's so many things happening at once. It's pretty mind-blowing and hard to hold on to.
Well, I think what DAOs are is essentially a primordial soup. If you create the best soup, the outcome will naturally come about by itself. And so the best way to enable that to happen is to just step away. Because if the DAO is meant to succeed, it will succeed. If it's not meant to succeed, it will fail. And you can't control that one way or the other. But what we have in this group is we have Trevor, we have Simon, who are singular artists with a singular vision that you can invest in and be part of. But we also have Paul and Abby, who've created a primordial soup from which you can draw 8,000 generative instances. And the generative art movement is so fascinating because it says the outcome is spectacular, but not because you designed it to be spectacular. It's because you designed the process instead. And so I think that gets right to the heart of what a DAO is, which is you either have a singular vision, which is a creative dictatorship, which I'm all for, by the way, or you just say, trust the process, which is horrifying and abysmal and just the worst place to be if you are a creative, but it's the thing that works most of the time. Trevor, what do you think?
Exactly, and I was just going to say, I mean, there are differences. There's obviously a lot of discussion, debate, and my wife and I are always talking about these kind of avatar collectibles, you know, what's the difference between that and art, and that's why I loved listening to Simon speak so eloquently as he did with a couple of fucks and shits as well. But you know, there is a lot of big differences, and there's similarities. For me, you know, I mean, accidentally falling into a position where I now have a community based around a group of or a singular artwork in a sense in the editions. You know, I always have to kind of explain in my Discord channel that the best way I can add value to my work, my past work, is to continue to make new work. You know, I need to continue to develop, to grow as an artist, to, you know, and I do that by building my reputation, by continuing to work, by cool collaborations like the one with Ice Cube coming up, and these kind of different things. But
stop.
Yeah, you know that.
You can't just drop Ice Cube.
Stop saying that, mate.
Drop the mic. Trevor Jones, Ice Cube. Like, imagine that picture.
Easy.
Yeah, hey, Ice. Yeah, listen, bro. You know, that beat or like Straight Outta Compton, man, that was whack. I think you could have just improved it with a little bit of like, oh, come on, man. You can't just drop that in there. Tell us more. What is that?
I've actually got 4 large paintings here, but I can't show them. You know, they're all kind of close to finished. It was getting an email from Cube and his guys, and I mean that's the reason why I decided to take his and his crew.
It was just Cube and his guys, you know, just Cube and his fellas, his homies.
He goes by Cube. So yeah, it's been a crazy, surreal 6 months for me. And there's been a lot of opportunities, huge opportunities to work with different companies or different celebrities or individuals. And the reason why, and a lot of people say, like, why Ice Cube? You know, first and foremost, well, why exactly why? But this was the one person who contacted me who actually wanted to make this a collaboration, that we're actually working together on the ideas that you know, he's going to be creating the music. You know, we're discussing ideas over a very long period of time. This is going to be kind of 3 to 4 months of work into this whole project. You know, it wasn't a cash grab, just like, you know, I'm going to work with, you know, this person here we're going to pop something out in 2 weeks. And I don't work like that anyway. Painting huge paintings takes months and months of my time. So, I'm in this weird position where, I see all this stuff going past so quickly and changing so quickly. And it's difficult for me to kind of, I'm always saying to my wife, like, oh shit, I got to get something out. It's been like February since I last did anything. I'm doing all this work, but nothing, everything's being pushed back. There's issues, it takes time. And it's a very weird position to be in. But like I was going to say, that there's this big difference between the collectible side and the creative side. And like Simon was saying, the last thing, doing a collaboration, it can be a disaster as well. Just having one other person involved, when you're doing your own thing, that's what I'm finding out in the last 6. I've had the most productive, unsuccessful 6 months ever, right? Because everything I'm doing is working with other people. And everything is being pushed back. There's somebody's dropping the ball. Some kind of issues come up that we didn't think about or they didn't think about. So everything, it looks like I've done nothing in the last 6 months. I've been busting my ass. But if I was busting my ass by myself on my own vision, my own work, I know when I can get it done and I can, set the dates for that. So it's super stressful. I'm more stressed now, than I've ever been in my life. And I became an artist to fucking not be stressed. I just want to sit back and paint and, maybe sell something, but it's been crazy.
Well, that's crazy though, because you and I both had this conversation. Like I ended up talking to Terry Crews. I ended up talking to Seth. I got in a conversation with Seth and his wife and Josh Gad. We're just we're just jamming about Somnium. And I'm just like, how did we get here? It's insane.
Yeah.
For Seth, it's just like, oh yeah, no, this is normal.
It's the big remix. I mean, I know Simon was talking about the bullshit aspect of it, but I feel like that's what's being embraced. And I think good art, acknowledges the bullshit within everything. And I think you're seeing art come from people that's, and other artists as well, that shows the hypocrisy and ridiculousness of what's happening as it's happening. And I think the opportunity here is just the great remix that's happening. The fact that Cube, which I'm now going to call him from now on, is calling you and that you're collaborating with him. We're just mixing shit together and seeing what happens. And that's pretty much always a good thing. When you talk about the primordial soup, I mean, that's essentially what it is. Like, life began as just shit getting mixed together and then seeing what happens.
Parker, are you finding artists that you worked with previously wanting to get into NFTs and wanting to insert themselves into this space at all? Is your speed dial ringing?
Yeah, like this is and this is back to actually your original question, and it's like back to earlier. So we are, both Ian, who I've worked with for 14 years, who runs Chief Experience Officer at Ledger. Like since I started, we've been in nonstop meetings with artists, and what we found and the biggest challenge that we're finding and the opportunity is, one, artists don't know what it means to self-custody their keys, and they don't know what it means to actually create a private public key pair and what it means to actually be able to transact and actually own those transactions on the blockchain. And so at the most basic level, they don't actually know what blockchain is. They want to make NFTs. Secondarily, they also don't know about provenance and about what it means to actually create a token and what it means to actually write your own contract to create that token and or use a validated contract, which there's not many of. And so there's a whole sea of people that are out there, as we know, using contracts and tokens to make their art. And these corporations are now forever intertwined into the artist's DNA. And that's something that artists don't know. And then lastly, artists also don't know the difference between what it means to be decentralized versus centralized. And the idea that a lot of the companies that are building on the decentralized blockchains, all they're doing is actually re-centralizing the decentralized for power. And instead of actually giving the power back to the artist, which I call agency, and teaching them about the tenets of blockchain, they're actually providing convenience. And so what the exchange is instead of me teaching you about, or the companies, these corporations is what they are, teaching Trevor and the like about, here's what it means to actually own your own keys, to transact with your own contracts and create your own tokens. They're providing convenience and not teaching that to artists. So that's those are the three biggest things that we're finding, and those are the three biggest things that we're going to try to, like, at Ledger around NFTs, try to accomplish over the next year, 18, 24 months. It's about how do we build programs to educate artists around basically the core principles and the promise and the freedom that blockchain provides. And this is back to my original statement, is it's like, I think that the freedom that blockchain provides and that can provide humanity through essentially what the white paper described, which is the trustless interaction of digital assets. We have to get artists involved and culture involved first. And that's how we're going to get the 7 billion people involved. And I think for this all to work, we've got to get people that are marginalized and the communities that have never been involved in technology educated. And we got to level them up. There are billions of people that have zero idea about what we're talking about, and they don't. And by the way, they don't have the means to know. So for us to,
but they do because they have a mobile phone.
No, they don't. No, dude,
yeah, but they do,
but they don't.
But we can assist them in that, and
of course. Well, that's the goal. That was
the funny thing is the resistance I've had from Swanee, who is somebody that I who knows me intimately. He's just pushed back, and I respect him immensely for the fact that he's pushed back constantly on an issue, which is, I think this is bullshit, convince me otherwise. And I was unable to. Even flashing like tons of money in his eyes, like he was unable to convince himself through me that what he was saying wasn't bullshit. But I come back because we're talking about bringing named artists, people who have a career already, who have, sunk costs into what they do already. With Abby and Paul, they're building a platform with a piece of IP that you can own, that you can leverage, that you can exploit. They're making it as easy as possible. They give you the artwork. You do whatever you want with it.
Which is rad.
Which is amazing. And I wonder if they understand just how profound that little piece. We've lost Gabby because it was 2 a.m. in the morning. But what Gabby is exploiting with Axie is you can be your own entrepreneur with a tiny piece of IP that you can exploit. Abby and Paul, do you understand the power of what you are building? Forget about the sale, forget about everything else. That community and what it wants to do through you guys, do you understand the power of what you have in your hands here and how to grow it and how to move it into something dramatically beyond just avatars and PFPs?
Someone mentioned earlier, this whole space is just really surreal. Even just being on this chat with you guys now, it's all so surreal. So I don't think we fully understand the power that we have, or what we know what we want to achieve. I mean, everything's just it's crazy surreal. I don't know if you want to chip in, Abby.
I mean, I don't think we can. Certainly, I can't quite comprehend it, to be honest. I mean, Paul's the dev on the project. I'm the artist. So you were just talking about how artists need to be educated on NFTs and on the blockchain, and I have absolutely been educated over the last couple of months because I knew nothing a couple of months ago. But I can't talk about this stuff at the same level that you guys are and that Paul does either. So, I'm still learning as well. And there was an argument out there. Sorry?
But that's actually fantastic, because I think for most people, when they see someone like me talking articulately about it, they feel intimidated. They need to go on the same journey at the same time with the same people in the same way. And we all talk about people kind of being priced out of punks, being priced out of apes, and this saturation of avatar projects. But everybody comes in at a different point. So they all need an entry level and a support system and a community in which they can gain that experience and everything else. And I think that you guys are off to a great start with that, because it's very gentle. It's not about pump my token and everything else. And you are the faces of the project, and that's very unusual. And that's why I put it to you. And if you don't have the answer, that's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. You're not that slick, because if you were that slick, we would probably think you were scammers. But you're not. But you're not. And that is why I brought this group together, because we have people who are pros, and we see them all the time. We have scammers who are incredibly slick. I probably come across as incredibly slick. Trevor shaved off his beard, so he looks a bit slicker than he used to. But you look at Parker. Parker looks like he's in a rock band, but like everyone has something to say. So I'm gonna put it to Richard now, who's dying to say something.
Well, what I love I think the best thing about this whole space is you end up with, if you if you let it happen, you get a load of your assumptions challenged the whole time. And I think the hardest thing, and I agree a lot with what Swanee was saying earlier, I think most of it is absolute bullshit. Like, really, it is. And I think the hardest thing is what I always ask whenever we're making a film at the moment about a DAO, with the people in the DAO talking about why they came to the DAO. Because the thing about the DAO is it's not interesting other than like, why did you end up here? Like, that for me is like, how did you end up here on this part of the internet? And I think the hardest thing is, how do you, like, what did you arrive here wanting to achieve? What was the problem you were trying to solve? And for me, I think, I can't remember who said it earlier, about explaining this stuff to normal people. I don't really even talk about NFTs anymore. Like, I talk about like
muggles, the normal people, they don't get it, bruv.
But sorry, but trying to explain loads of this complicated stuff, I sort of always try go back to what's the problem you're facing as an artist. Like, and for me, I think there's loads of these words that have got nuance to that have been completely messed up, mostly by the internet in general and the advertising model. Things like community. Like, community means nothing anymore. Because community isn't a thing, it's a process. In the same way art isn't a thing, it's a process. And that's kind of the pattern. And so for me, like, at the heart of it all is, how do you separate the funding on an ongoing basis of creative projects from the product? And that's the thing. There needs to be a division between church and state. And so that's the thing, is forget all the NFT stuff, forget the DAO stuff, like, forget all these acronyms. Like, it is literally like, there needs to be a sustainable way to fund ongoing creative work without there being like a product in the middle of it. And so for me, that is the single most interesting question of how do you do that? And then everything else kind of follows, because it doesn't matter whether you're interested in like researching psychedelics, or you're interested in like making beautiful art, or like, it's all the same kind of thing, which is long-term like stuff in the dark, like figuring stuff out. And that for me is the most interesting thing with on-chain stuff, is how do you build stuff over a series of over a period of time? And someone said earlier as well about the kind of the idea of Star Wars and like having a community-owned Star Wars. That will happen, but at the moment everyone's minting stuff to sell. Whereas Walt Disney at the start, he created Mickey Mouse. He didn't sell the IP, he retained the IP, and he built a world, and the world got bigger and bigger. So for me, I think there's a lot of this stuff where you can just get back to a very simple question of how do you sustainably fund interesting creative work without needing to sell stuff. And that for me is the kind of the most interesting question, because that's what everyone's trying to solve.
Seth, from your viewpoint, is there a degree to which once the writing's on the wall, we can see what this is, the people from your space, agents, management companies, are just going to co-opt this and take it over, and it's just going to become business as usual? Do you think?
I don't,
because
think
they're
so.
incredibly
No,
powerful.
so decentralized. They'll pretend to. I mean, like, I just got an email. I love getting emails from the institutions, like, where they're like, okay, JP Morgan was like, okay, we're gonna maybe start staking Ethereum now. Like, we own Ethereum. It just, they'll all pretend to co-opt these things, but by cutting out the middlemen, we're really getting a beneficial thing here of being able to create these organizations that are more impulsive and experimental and trying things. And I think the only way that the legacy systems, especially in Hollywood, have been in power is because they've been the mob bosses, and they've been restricting people's access to being able to do this stuff. But now that it's becoming decentralized, not just on the chain, but decentralized in terms of who has a voice, at any moment, someone can get people's attention just by having a great idea. And so I don't think we're going to see the agencies and the studios co-opt it and become in charge of it. I think we'll see them pretending to and trying to, but really, I think these things are really going to become more community owned.
If there's one person whose career I can see having gone through a series of cycles, Trevor, do you? It's very obvious from the work that you did that you were responding to stimuli. I mean, I'm talking about the QR codes that led through to an embracing of technology. What I love about you is that you're still so analog, and yet you are this guy who's plugged in the technology. You've seen cycles and cycles and cycles. Do you feel like you're equipped to ride out a kind of negative down spiral, a period where people don't care, and you're seen as a pariah in a sense, that you're embracing a technology or championing a technology that doesn't work? Do you feel that you can ride that out, or do you feel like at some point you've had enough and you can retire happy knowing that you left a piece of yourself on this space and that was good enough?
That's a really good question. I think, I was asked that something like that the other day, and you're just gonna retire now and hang out on a beach somewhere and do ceramics.
Because you could. You did great. Let's be honest. You did great. You could. You really could.
But then, artists don't retire. And also I think the fact that I've been interested in this the incorporation of technology with my art for over 10 years now, probably 12 really. But ever since I graduated in 2008, it's just so there's obviously something inside me that is completely fascinated by expanding ideas and exploring new things and new challenges, and technology is something that gives me these a whole, literally another world, another dimension to explore with through my creativity. So although there's that part of me that just wants to sit down and paint and turn off the computer and not have to deal with this and that and who's doing what and how much it's sold for, I'm just that person, and I will continue to remain in this space, and I'll continue to paint. I want to see that myself as that the David Hockney kind of, who was 82 when he picked up the iPad and started doing his creations. I would like to be 80 or 90 years old and still seeing, as the kind of the godfather, the OG crypto artist, which I hate that term, but
you are.
No, but you if there's an original gangster, I'd like it to be you, because then there'd be a gangster I could go and have a beer with.
Okay.
No, but what I think is fantastic is that you have the ability to adapt and evolve. I see it with everybody on this chat here. Everyone's seen something and gone, you know what? We're going to go left when everyone else went right. Swanee, you are the most adaptable human being I've ever met in my life. I wish you weren't. I wish you could just stick with something and go, I am an author, or I'm a writer, or I'm a singer, because you're good at every single
I also started doing sculpture. Made that.
You're the most talented human being I've ever met in my life. You could be Russell Brand in another life. It's ridiculous. And
when you started talking, I thought it was Russell Brand's brother or something. It sounds so right.
Exactly.
Chinese Russell Brand.
So something I did this week, which I've been experimenting with, because I feel like money gets in the way. I feel like, Trevor, you're partly responsible for this, because you keep selling paintings for too much. It's not your fault. Man's got to live, bro. But I feel like money gets in the way. So what I've been experimenting with was something that my boss, Camilla Russo, completely out of the blue, was gifted 64 ETH. And this was back 18 months ago. Out of the blue, someone who was a fan of the channel just gifted her 64 ETH. And it was highly significant, because you need 32 ETH to run a node on Ethereum version 2. A fan just gave her this stuff. And the reason he gave it to her is because he said, money gets in the way. We should be absolutely 100% ready to give up everything that we have to allow others to thrive and benefit as a community, as a group. It's not about hippieism or just being good people. It's because it genuinely makes everything better if you remove that barrier. And so I started experimenting with this. I gave the people in my office apes, bored apes. I just gave it to them. I was like, I don't care, have them, see what happens. And it made an enormous difference to their ability to embrace crypto as a thing that they wanted in their lives and a discussion they wanted to have, because it was no longer, I can't afford it, it's scary. It was just like, oh, this is fun. So what I'm doing right now, I bought, Abby and Paul, I bought a lot of your dogs today, like a lot. We're gonna give a buttload of them away. So we're gonna leave a link in the description to this video. You have to do a bit of homework, but like anybody who's watching, I'm going to give away a bunch of them to anybody who wants them, because I think it's more important for you to have them than for me to have them. And you could begin your journey without that, oh, did I spend this? If you take the money away, you enjoy the journey, you enjoy the culture, you enjoy that piece of it, everything is so much better. So that's what I'm doing today. It's not about me being like, oh, it's just a better way to do things. So get down in the description below. I think we've got 10 of them to give away. But I would prefer them to be in the hands of other people than to be centralized within me. But anyway, that's me. It's gifting. Call it what you want. It's not charity. It's just spreading, sowing.
Oh, you
Spreading the love.
I know. Look at me in my white t-shirt. Seth.
Yes, sir.
You're a degenerate. You're a degenerate, really, aren't you? You've been farming.
I am. I'm already trying to jump through those hoops so I can get all 10 of those.
That would be
who do I need to follow on Instagram? Then I get plus.
Okay, but one last question. Seriously though, like, make no mistake, things go down as much as they go up. Richard, what is the future look like for your project when things get tough, when everyone hates us and things are kind of down on the dumps? Will you still be building? Will you still be kind of connecting with people? How do you weather the storm when things are that bad? Because it's probably going to be like 3 years of hurt, something like that.
The weird thing, I had this, like, it wasn't an argument, but it was a debate like 2 or 3 days ago about like the ups and downs of this project that we're in. And the point of a currency and the point of like a token is, as long as, and for a DAO that has a treasury, as long as there's someone willing to exchange their time for a currency, then you have like people willing to build. And so for me, I don't know, like, I can only talk to myself, but I think if you have an idea that has been sitting with you for a long time, and for me, it was just this little thing in the back of my head going, what would the BBC look like in a network world? And like, that's like 5-7 years of me just like bugging me. And I think if you can get people excited about an idea and you give them just enough, or they have enough to sustain, then like you can make amazing things happen. But weirdly, it happens annoyingly slow. There was one thing I was going to just like, and I've just been reminded of it, that doesn't really get talked about, but I think maybe should be talked about more, which is that like we're all trying to build this Web3 world, like in a Web2 advertising, like attention-based system. So that for me is the, like, can we unhook ourselves from that? And if we can sustain like in that way, then we can build through the ups and downs. And for me, that's like the most important thing is like every artist, every musician, everyone who's achieved anything. If you look at someone like David Bowie, like anyone who's done something over a long period of time, it's because they were able to create like over a sustained period of time. And like that's the $1 million question really, or almost like the not $1 million question is, how do you kind of like get people to like, I don't know, persist through those ups and downs? But that's what we're trying to build. That's the point, is separating those two things. And it might work, it might not, but the whole impetus, the whole focus is, can you fund ongoing research and development across anything really in an ongoing and sustainable way, and anti-hype. So who knows? It'll probably fail, but it'll be an interesting experiment.
Well, one of the things that I keep coming back to again and again, I've just seen a message from Camilla, who is my boss, telling me that I cut off Abby, that I stopped Abby speaking, which looked bad. And I'm so aware of the fact that this space is not diverse enough, that we don't work hard enough to get more women. I actually tried really hard to find some female voices, some more diverse voices, and I didn't do a good enough job. And it preoccupies me a lot, actually, more and more of late, which is why I wanted to have Gabby on, because he represents a completely different community of people. But Abby, is there anything you want to say in regards to that? How, you know, whether you feel disenfranchised by how excessively male this community is, how excessively kind of trader oriented it is, or whether that's not a threat at all? But like, I think it'd be fair to let you have a chance to speak, at least anyway.
Oh, Robin, no worries about cutting me off. There's a lot of people in this chat and you need to keep it going, so it's not taken personally at all. Yeah, I mean, I'm not offended by the number of males in this chat. I think it just happens to be a very male-dominated space at the minute, and there's lots of different reasons for that. You know, even though this is open to females, how many actually are interested in it, and what are the reasons behind that? I think, you know, we have to unpick that. There is a lot of equality out there, and we can see that in the space as well. How many females choose to get into NFTs? The only reason I'm here is because Paul sent me a text message one day and just said, "Hey, you're good at art, aren't you? Why don't we, you know, you should look at these NFTs." And I just like anyone else, was just like, "Yeah, you're all right. You can do some stuff, can't you?" I looked at it.
We're
I
actually
just thought,
brother and sister-in-law in real life.
yeah, in law, yeah.
No.
We're not related, Paul.
The funny thing is, I haven't mentioned this already, but Seth's wife is like something of a power player in Hollywood, and I'm curious whether your wife has encountered difficulties or reverse favoritism because of who she is and where she's come from. I mean, if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine, but like, I think it's a fair point, you know.
My wife is actress Bryce Dallas Howard. Her dad is Ron Howard. So yeah, she's dealt with a lot of like accusations of nepotism and you know, and to some extent, obviously nepotism is real and has helped her in many ways, and it's been a hindrance in many ways. But in terms of the male-female of it all, I mean, I don't want to generalize, but it's interesting. Like, my wife is super interested in the space, but is kind of trusting me as the more reckless one, and whether or not that's because I'm male or not, I don't know. But I think it takes a bit of recklessness to get into this space because it is emerging. There are bubbles that burst every minute and websites that get hacked. I don't know if it's a more male thing to be willing to accept that level of risk. In my experience, like, my wife is the more responsible one and goes into something when she has more of an understanding of it. So she's kind of letting me explore the space right now and make the mistakes, and then she'll kind of hop in when the water's a little warm and safer. But what was your question again?
No, it wasn't a question. It was actually more just, it was to get some perspective on, you know, Hollywood is a very male-oriented space and has been traditionally for a long period of time. Filmmaking always has been. Art, on the other hand, hasn't been. It's pretty diverse and pretty well spread. I've had an interesting experience over the last month because I've been putting together a film on digital fashion. Fashion is dominated by female voices, and what you discover very quickly is that digital fashion has a huge part to play in blockchain. But what is inevitably going to happen is going to be driven by teenage girls. So you try and wrap your head around a space which is dominated by men in their kind of early to mid 20s, being completely overwhelmed and taken over and influenced to its core by teenage girls. That is a incredible thing, because my daughter's like 9 years old. She's about to just own the world spectacularly. She's a beautiful artist, but like, you think about the way that they communicate, you think about the influence that they have. Swanee, for instance, he'll send me like the latest TikTok star and tell me like, this girl she's the most important person on the planet. I'm like, how is this possible? I have no idea. Like Bella Poarch, or, you know, all these
Addison
people.
Rae, Charlie D'Amelio, Bella Poarch, they are on the billions.
But when you think about this, this horrifically male skewed space will literally be turned in 48 hours completely female. And I think that is amazing. But I don't know if anyone else has a viewpoint on that, or a perspective, or anything to say. But, you know,
I think it's up for us as well, people on the call and other people in the space, to introduce like female artists, creators, whoever, into the space as well. I think we have some sort of accountability there, and we have to make it happen as well.
I did notice this at the very start, that there weren't very many women, and when they are women, you can't really tell because they've got a strange name, and you know, they haven't got the picture up there. And you know, when I first joined the community and I joined some Discords, I was in a Discord with you, wasn't I, Paul? And everyone was calling me dude and bro. And I just didn't let them know my gender for a little while. And I thought it was quite cool, actually. It was quite nice to step out of my own skin and be a dude and a bro for a little bit. They found out eventually. And then obviously most people stopped calling me that. Some people still do, because it's kind of cool in the crypto space to do that. But yeah, one of the first people to actually kind of big player in NFTs to tweet about us and to support us was somebody I contacted directly called CryptoPom. She's female, and she actually introduced me to a whole community of female crypto artists. So there are quite a lot out there, probably more than we know. Quite a lot of them had a lot of success as well.
But it goes beyond that as well, because we have transgender artists, gender is fluid, everything is
Absolutely.
fluid, and you can be whoever you want to be. It's interesting because apes are gender neutral, I would say. You know, you can have an ape wearing a dress or having pink hair, but it could be a boy or a girl. And I think that has helped apes' success somewhat in comparison to me bits. But, you know, Trevor, your wife is a powerhouse. She's always DMing me. I'm like, I don't know what to say to her. She's like, what does she think of all your success? Gotcha.
She's watching.
Careful with your words.
She's embraced it. I agree with Seth though, also with the kind of the fact that, I mean, I've always been much more of a risk taker, always, and she is absolutely not. So, you know, we will constantly negotiate what the way forward is. We just started up a company now, which is brilliant and exciting, and we're 50-50 directors in it. So if I start making a decision she doesn't like, she's like, hey, I own half of you. So, you know, this is really a 50-50 relationship. She does struggle with a lot of it, being an artist and not getting the type of recognition that I am. And so we talk about that a lot, and you know, it is a challenge for her, but you know, she is a powerhouse, and she definitely and she'll always say it, she's the funny one in this relationship. So she really generates a huge amount of online conversations based entirely on her hilarious tweets and her silly approach to everything, and she's just she's wonderful. And I love you, baby, and I think you're amazing. She's just watching right now. So, and I'll see you soon after this.
Okay, listen, guys, we're going to wrap it up now. So I'm just going to hand it over to each of you. If there's something you want to say, I mean, the idea here was to try and understand the sustainable long-term vision value of NFTs, if there is one, or whether we haven't figured it out yet. But I wonder if there's anything you want to say, any final thoughts, given what we've discussed here. I'm going to put it over to Richard first, because I know you and I talk a lot philosophically about what we can do to help this sustainability idea. So over to you.
I always have this, the simple thing for me that I always come back to is, how do you separate out, how do you have church and state? Like, if you have a DAO and you have these incentive models, if you play them a bit forward, how does the focus not end up being on like inwards? How does the focus shift outwards? And I think that for me is like the fundamental like funding models for blockchains. That's where the most interesting thing for me is, like, and I think like that's like a layer down into the root of actually how these blockchains are designed, and the ability to separate church and state, the ability to have a separation between the funding of creative work, the funding of contributions. And ultimately, that's why Decred for me is the most fascinating project in crypto, and most people really don't know much about it. But they've created this effectively Jedi mind trick where they suck people in on one side and you invest in a kind of crypto asset, and it's kind of like Bitcoin, but like better Bitcoin. And on the other side, they produce open source software. And for me, that's like a beautiful, it's kind of like a brilliant sort of balancing act. Okay, you invest over here, but over here, anyone can put forward a proposal, be funded, can work, and everything is given away for free. And for me, that was like a really interesting and elegant model. But I think it starts at the underlying funding models of these blockchains. Else, everything else just has this kind of like gravity to it where it might not look like that at the beginning. I mean, we've been talking about this for the Defiant, right? With like there's some ideas for how would you do long form investigative journalism that can't be funded? like in the traditional way? How do you do that? How do you do something that's the equivalent of WikiLeaks for crypto? And so for me, it's like, well, can this model sustain that? And if it kind of closes in on itself within 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, then that's not the right way. It needs to expand out and it needs to open up, rather than, I don't know, the financial games where there's a rug pull at some point, or it just, the gravity is in the wrong direction for me. And that answers a lot of the questions I think maybe Swanee has, which is, it's a separation. Like art, I think, is a process, and it needs to be separate from the asset, the thing, and that is, I don't know, that's where I would pay attention to.
Parker, there's a danger with Ledger that because your product comes in a glossy box, that it feels establishment, that people would tar you with the same brush as a centralized exchange. How do you get over that? How do you? But you know where I'm coming from, right? It's a hard way. People are suspicious, but they will be, because it feels like you're coming from a place of glossy consumerism. And crypto and the sort of the core values of that are not that. They're scrappy. They're written on the back of a napkin kind of thing. So how do you get past that?
That's a very good question. I want to get back to what you asked of what's imperative. So it's like how we all win here and how everyone wins. And I'll cover that, and I can cover a little bit about Ledger and what Ledger provides. But I took the job at Ledger because I asked Pascal if educating marginalized communities, marginalized by the digital divide, was imperative to us, and it is. And so it's a key factor in how all of this works, in my opinion, is that we teach people that otherwise wouldn't have the means to understand what blockchain is, what it is. And I think that starts with this idea of, and I love that you think it's glossy. It's is it what it means to actually own your own keys. And so I think that's you talked about how do we make this sustainable, and how do we make this like an incredibly long-term value proposition so that everybody succeeds. It's that we've got to, and I'm going to say it again, we it's imperative that minus the one woman that's with us today, that we look out and educate people that do not look like us, that don't identify as us, about what the promise of this technology is. And so then what is the promise of the technology, you ask? So I can set up my own crypto keys here, and you could too. And we could do this in a distributed way with Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network, and do it completely anonymously, and it'd be on basically a trustless network. That's what this technology is it allows me and you, Robin, to exchange digital assets in a secure manner, in a trustless manner. And so that's like the basis to me. Like while I agree that like funding art projects is actually really, really imperative, I actually think the promise of the idea that we can actually own a digital asset for the first time in the history of humanity and exchange that and on a network that doesn't require anybody else but you and me to do that. This is the value proposition. And this is like, the more that we educate people what that actually can do for freedom, and create freedom for huge swaths of people to be able to transact with digital assets for the first time in humanity. That, I think, is like, that's step number one. And to do that, we've got to actually do that and to educate communities that are marginalized by the digital divide, which is everybody that's not in this room, that doesn't look like us.
Swanee,
that's my part.
Swanee, are you sold? Are you sold because you are the skeptic? Did Parker's?
Well, I don't want to be.
He sells it well. He has a good spiel.
Let's say, Parker, I've written a sitcom that involves your technology. It's fucking awesome. So let me send you it. And I mean it. It's a 10 episode.
We'll send it to you digitally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in SAG too, so we can. I'm happy. I'm happy to resurrect my acting career.
It is. It involves around a mistake between the guy thinks it's a lighter. Turns out it's one of your Ledger things with $500,000 of Bitcoin on it. Anyway, that's another thing. If you want me to be conflammatory about it, which I don't mean any of this, I think you're all great. But like, could you not just hand someone it?
Yeah, you
Or
could. So this is what's awesome. So I'm going to answer this question because I think this is really, really important. What you're describing, Robin, is that what sets Ledger apart for this device? We have another device which most of you have never seen, which is quite amazing as well. That what sets us apart from every other company on the planet is that me and you and everybody that we teach about this can set this up and transact with digital assets today with no one being in the middle. Now, if we want to take those digital assets and remove them and put them on exchange and exchange them for fiat, that requires anti-money following AML and following KYC. And as corporations such as we are and other corporations, we have to do that because we want to work in the world. I mean, and we want to be a part of a positive piece of the community and a part of the population as a whole. But what the really cool thing about this device and what we get to do is we actually get to create this device, which as we know is like, it's super arcane how this works. And we actually can do this without we can do it without an exchange, and we can do it without all the other bits and bobs in the middle. And we can actually exchange digital assets if you buy one and I buy one. And this is what sets Ledger apart, and why I think it's really interesting that you would consider us glossy, and I don't even know what the words you used, because I think that's the piece of differentiation that differentiates this company from this company, is that there's no way that this device works on its own without the network, right? This device works by itself inside of a blockchain, distributed blockchain network, and it doesn't require all the applications that this device requires.
What if you lose it though?
Well, that's well. That's totally okay. You can lose this. We have them. So I can cover this, but like, are you familiar with how this works? Yeah. Okay.
No, I think they're cool. I think they're really cool.
It's just gonna end up in a fight.
No. I think it's great. I think it's super cool. Like I realistically have written a sitcom with that as a mistaken lighter.
I think that the piece is what you're asking is, what if I lose the words that are on this piece of paper or whatever? And we don't even need to go there.
We're gonna get them tattooed on our eyelids, and that's all there is to it.
Oh Jesus!
Trevor, could you exist if none of this was on blockchain? Would you be happy?
Absolutely.
Well, there you go then. So why do it?
The challenge, the new frontier, being a pioneer, it's exciting. And meeting, I was going to say, you asked me what, one last kind of observation of this, and I don't do interviews, and that I hate them, and so I probably should do more, because I wouldn't have gotten to meet these people here. And they're so diverse, maybe not entirely, with Abby being the only woman here, but just in kind of how everybody approaches what they're doing, their thoughts, their ideas, what they're interested in. And I've loved listening to every single one of you, because, like I said, it's not healthy. I get my information from Twitter, which is why I'm angry all the time, because actually getting to see people and talk to you and to hear what you're interested in, and it's really, really fascinating. I would never have probably stumbled upon at least Parker and Richard, because we're just, it's worlds that I would never even think about. The others are creatives, and what is it? Not the Bored Apes, it's the dogs.
Top dogs.
It's like there's, I had to look at you.
It's grassroots. It's grassroots.
I watched a video with you guys today just to kind of see what you were doing, and I really enjoyed watching it and seeing your faces, and that's what you talked about, the fact that you're putting your identity on the line, and I found that amazing, and that's the integrity that I like, and I think there's so many individuals in the space that you don't know who they are, you don't know anything about them, you don't know where they live, you don't know anything, and so to actually see people and to talk to them face to face, and to see their facial reactions and how they get excited about something, and Simon, I just love listening to all the time. It's like up to them. My takeaway from reactions and how they get excited about something. I need to do these things more often and get to meet people. So yeah, it's been great.
Seth, I promised you that I would introduce you to a bunch of cool people in this space, and I hope tonight that
you fulfilled that promise. You're
yeah, and it's important to me that you get to meet people like Abby and Paul, because
amazing.
They don't know what they don't know, and they're going into this completely fresh with no cynicism. It's so important that we have that, this freshness, this idea that this environment can be made in our own image and in our own way, and I think that's why I've responded to their project so well, because it just feels like they're just making it for themselves in real time and enjoying that journey. And I think their community is really responding to that. And there's so much about trying to build an alternative version of Hollywood that wholesomeness needs to happen. You just take the Hollywood bit away from it and just say, what does film and creation and characters and everything, storytelling look like if you take away the commerce? And that's a big question to ask. So I hope that you got something out of this as well.
Definitely. I also want to read Swanee's pilot. It sounds pretty cool.
It's fucking brilliant.
That's a great idea. I'd love to know what happens to that guy.
I'll share it. I think it's great. I think I love a little unit like that with all the stuff on it. It's like proper fucking Star Trek. I like it.
Yeah.
It's a MacGuffin. It's a MacGuffin.
No, but it's still real.
It's such a great idea that this thing can be mistaken for a lighter, which is the beginning of man. I mean, it started with fire, and now we've got this ledger that has your digital identity on it, and it just happens to enable him to have access to all of this wealth now, and who knows what
$500,000 on it. And it's about him trying to get it off there. Dude thought it was a lighter. He's running away from London. Anyway, I'll pitch it another time. I think it's great, and I love to work with you, Parker, about it, and I love to send it to you all. You can all read it.
I'm down. I'm down.
And Robin is going to direct it.
This is great.
And then you guys and you, I can't point, are all in it.
Yeah, whatever.
I do want to just say one more thing before I cut everyone off. I do think everyone's great, and I know Robin always says I'm the one who thinks it's all bullshit. I still think it's bullshit. But I think that everyone in it is really cool, and I do. And the reason I think it's bullshit is because I am essentially a fucking idiot. That's why.
But a great actor and a wonderful musician and an all-round okay guy.
I'm a good cook.
Paul and Abby, I'm stoked that we could bring you onto this discussion, because I think it's so exciting to see the beginning of your journey without any of the heartache that I feel like I've gone through a gazillion times on this. Is there anything that you now think of or you're thinking about as a result of this discussion? Or are you going, yeah, we nailed it. We absolutely nailed it.
Yeah, I'm really happy to just be part of the really okay bullshit that was just described, to be honest. I think, sorry, Paul, what were you going to say? I don't want to cut you off.
No, I mean, one of the decisions we made when we started looking around, and Robin, you said you've been affected by, I guess, RuPaul's and other projects and stuff before, and so have I. And I started thinking about, do we go full openness and full transparency on our identities and start putting ourselves on camera? And in the beginning, I wasn't quite sure if that was the right move or not, but I think listening to you guys, listening to the community, listening to everybody is definitely the right move. And I just hope that more projects follow suit. I think if you go full public, it's sort of accountability, a bit of credibility, and just builds that trust up. And I hope more projects follow suit.
You either need to go all in, or you get stuck in the middle. I think that's
100%. Exactly. Yeah.
If there's one thing I've learned about this space, it's that there is huge supposed barriers to all of this, which is you don't understand trading, you don't understand finance. All of these things can be learned. It takes a bit of time, but you can learn them. What this space lacks, amongst everything else, is ideas. It lacks creativity. You can see that in the plethora of forks. Everything is a copy of 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 a copy. So that if you are that singular person who has a unique idea and is able to listen, I know Seth talks about being a listener. He listens, and you can see that. That's why I pass on articles that I find, because I know that he reads them and he listens, and he's always just absorbing. If you listen to all the different ideas out there, somewhere in it, is something amazing, but you have to do that work of listening. But you also have to be very, very, very disrespectful of those who would normally command respect. So I'm talking about the people who are on Twitter saying, oh, I'm a VC and I know everything. They do not. They do absolutely 100% do not. Be like Trevor, dissent, be obnoxious, be difficult, question things, be like Swanee, be a dissenter. Because in that moment, a gap will open up and you go, oh my God, that's it. You'll be like Parker saying, Ledger is the thing. This is where I'm going. And I that's where creatives and creative people see the gap. And I might be doing a disservice here, but I make the distinction between creators and creatives. And I think creatives have the ability to find a different direction to do things, and creators primarily look at what everyone else has done and maybe do it slightly better. But creatives fundamentally turn left. So be Zoolander, turn left. That's me out.
He couldn't turn left, wasn't that?
Well, maybe he wanted to, and in that moment, he became the greatest model of all time. Who knows?
You look a bit like Tony Stark in that little box. You do know that.
That's what I was going for, bruv. So when I put my iron suit on, I'm just going to go and conquer the galaxy. Listen, everyone, thank you so much. I want to thank Gabby Dizon, who had to jump off earlier. I wish we could have heard more from him. I want to thank Parker. I want to thank Cooper. I want to thank Trevor, Seth, Gabby, Abby. I can't believe I just did that. Abby and Paul, and Richard and Swanee, my boss Camilla Russo for allowing us to do all these amazing things at the Defiant. This was a fantastic session. Like I said before, we will leave a link to a Google form in the description below. Come and claim a dog. Be part of that community. I'm happy to give them away. I think it's better for them to be in other people's hands than ours. This was a wonderful discussion. Reach out to these people on Twitter. We'll put their Twitter handles in the description below. But until next time, this was the Defiant. This was awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
I'll
guys.
see you around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.